Good morning. Thank you so much for being here for our session on wearable tech. I'm so excited to have all of you here in person, as well as those of you that are watching from the live stream. Before we get started, I know a lot of people have a question of what is wearable tech. So we have a quick video just to showcase some creations in the wearable tech ecosystem, and then we'll get started right after that. It's about a minute and a half. Thank you, Celine. And so we appreciate having that video introduction. Again, I am Lakeisha Greenway, founder and CEO of Wearable Tech Ventures. We are a 501c3 organization based here in Baltimore, Maryland. And we started in Baltimore, but now we have coverage in 4 continents. And we actually started in 2015, so it's an amazing thing to be here in 2022 at home in Baltimore, because we've done a lot of work outside of Baltimore. And I'm so excited to share some of our panelists today. But before we do that, I also want to congratulate Technically Media on 10 years of business. Technically Media has been a tremendous partner since we started. Actually, we were Glam Tech at the time, and transitioned into Wearable Tech Ventures. And so if you want to learn and read more about our story, I believe we have like 4 or 5 articles that Technically Media has been producing as we have grown over that particular time frame. So thank you. And when we started, actually it was a self-funded effort in 2015. I produced the first Wearable Tech Expo in Maryland, focused on small businesses. And you'll see I have on a little belt today. This is an early prototype. It's a solar-powered belt that we had a local fashion student develop for us at that time. And when producing the first Wearable Tech Expo here, we had a focus on fashion tech. I brought in Beyonce's fashion director, Ty Hunter. He has a book coming out this fall, make sure you get it. And he's still a supporter of us. And so from there, we transitioned and developed a youth pipeline. So we partnered with University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We've been a partner with them for 4 years, moving into our 5th year. So we're excited about some of the programs we're going to be launching nationally and internationally next year for our pipeline. And then we also have amazing founders that we'll be talking about, as well as amazing partners. So I just wanted to make sure, I give that little shout out and let you know that you can read more about our story from Technically Media. So let me start to my immediate left. I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves. And one of our panelists is actually traveling. Lamar, he's not here from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, so he sends his regards to everyone, but I'll make sure to share that. And one other thing is that our panelists here are a part of our ecosystem. So we are a global ecosystem, and these folks have been amazing in helping us to grow to the stature that we are today, from a self-funded initiative where a lot of people were ignoring us to now where we have coverage in 4 continents. So I will allow them all to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I'm Iris Wagstaff. I am a STEM program director at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, better known as AAAS, and there I manage a $20 million portfolio of initiatives focused on broadening participation in STEM and innovation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Joy Tolliver. I'm a program coordinator at the National Institute on Aging, which is one of the institutes that's part of the National Institutes of Health. I work in the Office of Strategic Extramural Programs with the Small Business Programs, which are also known as the SBIR and the STTR grants. We have over $140 billion in non-dilutive funding that we award to small businesses per year for federal research and development that fits our mission space. So happy to be here.
I'm Nick Williams. I've been associated with Wearable Tech Ventures for about 1.5 years now, largely focused on grants and education initiatives. And I'm the director of product at XCore Therapeutics, which is a Baltimore-based preclinical medical device company focused on assisting with end-stage lung failure. I became associated with wearable technology in general about 4 or 5 years ago at the beginning of my doctorate in electrical engineering at Duke. My research focused on wearable and printed electronics.
So this is exciting, these partners within our ecosystem. As you saw from our video, we have a goal to support 100 startups by 2030. And a lot of that is going to be a lot of technical, scientific research that takes a little time to produce or whatnot. But what we've been able to do is establish a success story with University of Maryland, Baltimore County, by introducing wearable technology and pitch programs for students. And this past year, our students actually pitched to Under Armour, the creations that they came up with. And then after that particular program, then we have a partnership with AAAS, the HBCU Making and Innovation Symposium, and that's where we coach a number of the students there, judge some of their programs, and then we, this past year, launched an initiative with NIH, NIA with the boot camp, and so I'm excited that Joy is going to be able to share more about that. But ultimately, why does this matter to Baltimore? We actually started in Baltimore after the murder of Freddie Gray, and we have this amazing mission, we have this amazing impact, and to see what we've been able to do, we can only go to the moon with everyone here if you join our journey. So throughout our presentation today, there are QR codes that are on our screen. You can make sure that you register for our ecosystem so you can get updates, as well as our podcast where we actually feature wearable founders and innovators throughout our ecosystem. So I'm going to get this started now. And so I'm going to ask each of our folks here to share what has a little bit deeper dive into your role with working with Wearable Tech Ventures and understanding that this is a $52 billion industry. Right now, what we know is that there's 100 million units that are being produced, and we're anticipating about 300 million units a month within the next 4 years. So there's a major economic impact. And so from your standpoint, Iris, you've been working with us in the post-collegiate standpoint. Can you share a little bit more about why is wearable technology important, and a little bit more, some of the efforts that you've been doing with Wearable Tech Ventures?
Sure. So at AAAS, I manage our HBCU Making and Innovation Initiative. It is a grant sponsored by the National Science Foundation, and the overall goal is to advance innovation capacity at HBCUs. And one large component of that grant is our yearly HBCU Making Innovation Showcase. We send a call out to all 104 HBCUs, and we support undergraduate and graduate student innovation teams along with the faculty advisor to develop and pitch a prototype or innovation in response to one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And our partnership with Wearable Tech Ventures is really been integral and very beneficial to our students, because through this partnership, we were able to introduce a new format for their tech and innovations, which is wearable tech. So being able to add that capacity to our existing initiative has been, greatly beneficial, not only to our students, but to our faculty. And then Lakeisha also mentioned the coaching. So year long, as they're developing their prototypes and iterating on their innovations, they're getting, coaching that's worth a lot of money from Lakeisha, just, the e-mentoring, the one-on-one consulting, are they really designing for the client? What are the potential uses and benefits to impact the quality of life? And we feel that this partnership is really essential, because our students who are already underrepresented minorities in STEM, as well as in innovation, the thing that we're trying to communicate to them is that while they're developing this expertise as students in STEM and innovation, that they can actually use the expertise that they're developing to address issues in their community, issues in their the neighborhoods that these HBCUs reside, as well as global issues. There are some critical problems and challenges that we need to address, and we need to engage all of our human capital, specifically those students and faculty who have been, not just by numbers, underrepresented, but those students who have been just disenfranchised and discouraged from the scientific pursuit. So we are really grateful for this partnership to really operationalize inclusion for these young innovators and the next generation of innovators.
Yeah, so I'll dig a little bit deeper into my role. One major part of my role at the NIA's small business programs is really leading our diversity and inclusion efforts. So like I mentioned, we have $140 million a year that are awarded to U.S. small businesses for federal research and development. So really looking at who's applying, who's being funded, why not. And so I led this very exciting initiative that launched earlier this year called the NIA Healthy Aging Startup Challenge and Bootcamp. And the goal of this program is really to look at the diversity of our applications and figure out what are the needs of diverse founders, why are there some challenges with really accessing SBIR funding, and not just SBIR funding, but breaking into entrepreneurship. And how can we, within our realm of what we can do, provide resources and support to help founders to move forward with their innovative ideas. And so that's what this challenge is all about. What it is a 4-month boot camp where we have 20 diverse research entrepreneurs that are developing very exciting innovations who are going through an entrepreneurial boot camp, who also have 3 to 4 mentors, which is where Wearable Tech Ventures comes into the picture, and who are working on their business plan and their pitch deck with mentorship and coaching throughout 4 months. And at the end, we'll be pitching for $60,000 cash prizes. And a part of this boot camp is also helping these entrepreneurs to understand how to put forth the competitive grant application so that they can access that funding as well. So in terms of wearable tech and what that means to NIA, I don't want to jump the gun, but COVID really spurred people to think differently about telehealth and wearable technologies and how these technologies can really increase access to healthcare for individuals. And so we fund all types of wearable technologies, remote patient monitoring technologies that help with diagnosis or predicting disease, and several that are in this space in our portfolio that Lakeisha is helping to mentor. So the partnership is great, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here. Yeah.
So I think what we've heard about is sort of there's a pretty significant entrepreneurial ecosystem within Wearable Tech and within Wearable Tech Ventures especially. What we need to focus on is sort of the future founders And that's really where Wearable Tech Ventures is our educational arm comes in. But this summer we had second or third, I think it was our third summer program, summer initiative, and hackathon, where it was a worldwide program, hybrid, some in person, some online, and it was a joy, it was fantastic to assist with sort of the curriculum development in that and some of the educational aspects. And I just want to highlight what Joy said in that telehealth is, I believe, the future of medicine. Currently, before COVID-19, it was 99+% of all medicine was in person. Over COVID, I think it jumped to about 17%, and now it's back down to about 10%. But our mentality towards medicine has changed, and this is going to, the progression towards telehealth is really, it's unstoppable at this point. And so what I would like to see, and sort of what we're working towards with Wearable Tech Ventures, is a bifurcation in healthcare, where the vast majority of care can be taken offline, taken via telehealth, guided by wearable technologies, guided by constant patient monitoring, and then at a certain point, every single patient needs hospital care, needs ICU admission. That is going to be inevitable. And so we are expecting, and we're sort of driving towards this bifurcation, where the vast majority of care can be done with wearable technologies that allows for improved care to far more people. So over the past decade, about 100 hospitals in the United States have closed. Predominantly, that's in low-income and rural neighborhoods. Patients that live in cities, patients that sort of are generally high socioeconomic status, their healthcare hasn't really changed much. But we've seen a pretty significant decline in immediate care for, in a lot of ways, those that need the care the most. And wearable technology and Wearable Tech Ventures and educating sort of the next generation of diverse and non-traditional founders can allow for a more inclusive future that enables that level of monitoring, enables that level of patient care.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things I love about our ecosystem is that we provide exposure to professionals and researchers, such as these folks that are here. And then also, as Nick mentioned, we hosted the world's largest wearable tech hackathon this past year. So we're looking for partners if you want to join us for next year to continue with that modem. And as a result of that, our future founders were exposed to facets of wearable technology development, but then also we were able to dive a little bit deeper publicly into facets of developing the metaverse. And so ultimately in 2023, I'll announce it here, in 2023, Wearable Tech Ventures will be expanding our youth programming pipeline to K through 12 versus just middle school and high school. And we will be a source where businesses want to develop their worlds or specific presence in the metaverse, they can do that. We also have a founder that we work with that can set up just a business profile, but for actually setting up the entire environment so it looks like where we are right now. We are developing that talent pipeline based here in Baltimore. And there's very few people in the world that have that specific skill set. And so we have entities, especially within DoD, that are working with us right now on that particular facet. But bringing it back here, I just want to ask our panel, why wearable technology and why now? There was a mention of COVID. COVID, brought out a number of wearable technologies that were used in universities as well as within the NFL. And what we know is that early on with wearable technology, a lot of things were just gimmicky. They were just developed just because they could be developed. When we look at research, and not to pick on MIT, but early research, a lot of the research was skewed. It was only done on white males. And so there's been some skewing. There's been some opportunities that we've identified to make sure that there's inclusion in all facets of that development. So I'll ask all of our panelists again, why wearable technology and why now, even though, COVID helped to bring its emergence to the mainstream?
I would probably say, wearable tech is probably the biggest innovation since the smartphone, and just the huge potential, not just with healthcare, but just equity issues across all fields, all disciplines. I just feel like it's a huge potential and opportunity, again, to address basic quality of life issues, again, equity issues, education, not just healthcare, just basic quality of life. And again, like I said, there's some very critical challenges and problems that we have to address globally, and helping to develop, a diverse pool for these next generation of innovators to actually, again, apply their, science, engineering, and innovation skills to address these issues that affect all of us. I think, really investing in this next generation of, young and upcoming innovators is critical, not just to their education, but again, to our quality of life.
That was a perfect answer. Sums up all my thoughts. But I'll add, one thing. I absolutely agree with everything that you said. Those are really great points. And what really excites me the most, I'm a big health disparities, person. And I see so much potential with wearable technology when done the right way, in the research and development of these technologies, when done the right way. And when I say that, I mean with adequate representation from the start, proof of concept, all the way to the end. I just see that endless potential with addressing, health disparities issues, with addressing all types of equity issues. I just think it's very, very exciting. I'll just give one example of even outside of healthcare, but sort of intersected, is we funded a company, Baltimore-based company, was funded by National Institutes of Minority Health and Health Disparities, Baltimore-based, a company called Juxtopia, who is developing a wearable technology using artificial intelligence and AR to train police officers on de-escalation techniques. And I just think that's amazing. And, the goal is to really reduce negative outcomes of police encounters for Black and brown individuals. So that's just one example of the potential that I see. And I think with 2020, with COVID and, all of the things that, kind of came to a clash in this country, it's the right time for this. So I'm very excited to see where that goes.
It's hard to add on to that, but from, we talked a lot about sort of the social aspects of it, but I think also the technology is finally here. It took a long time for electronics, for computer programming, for material science to really get to a stage in which we can have something that is useful, that's not just sort of a gimmicky system that, you can put on your shirt and it lights up and wow, that's fantastic. But now we have technology that is finally useful. That's the invention of flexible materials, stretchable materials that allow for conformal access to the skin so that you can actually measure heart rate or sweat or glucose monitoring. So, right, I mean, in all honesty, we've had wearable technology in the form of glucose monitoring for a really long time. COVID has assisted with more implementation and more uptake of it, but we are now seeing that the technology is finally there to bring what has been sort of in science fiction for decades, if not 100 years. We're now finally there with the technology as well.
Absolutely. And just kind of piggyback on some of the health disparities that we face every day, and then kind of tying it to why we started Wearable Tech Ventures, especially with the example of Juxtopia. I started this after the murder of Freddie Gray. I just did not like the way that our children and our people were represented in the media. And so I took the initiative to self-fund this. And that self-funding journey, which I thought was ridiculous to have to self-fund for as long as I did, because I did knock on doors, I got emails and documentation. But that is what's happening to a lot of people. And thankfully, now there's an emphasis on funding and providing programs and whatnot. And there's still room for improvement in that particular area, right? But going back to something that Nick said, we've been faced with wearable technology. I recall now, as a little girl, my great-grandmother having the little chain around her neck in case something ever happened to her, she could press it, right? And she had dementia. My father has a pacemaker, and so he's able to communicate with his doctor, and they could check his device via telehealth. When we think about fashion, of course, I'm in a solar-powered belt right now, but there's a number of different things that are even being done from the fashion perspective. And there's a huge opportunity because fashion has a unique fashion history. So there's so many ways that we can help Baltimore get on the map globally and join our ecosystem. And a big part of that is funding, right? So I'm coming to you guys with that. And so we talk a little bit, maybe we could talk a little bit about dilutive versus non-dilutive funding, why that's important, and what are some areas of opportunity where folks can work with us. I can tell you from the standpoint of understanding wearable technology, we have to be here because very few people understand it. We understand the journey of the founder. We understand the type of founder that we're working with. I'm a perfect testimonial here, educated woman that still had issues getting funded, right? So from your standpoint, what are some success stories that you can share about, and they've already mentioned some of them, but what are some success stories of that funding, and why are these other options so important for those in our ecosystem?
Well, I can speak from the role of a program director at a nonprofit. We are not a grant-making agency. We fund our projects through grants from like the NIH, the National Science Foundation, and other foundations. But our ecosystem of community of practice that we're building for these HBCU students and faculty are connecting them with resources like SBIR and Wearable Tech Ventures, and like bringing them in the room where the funding sources are available. So just connecting them, helping them identify funding sources, helping them through like the grant making process. And I think something that people are not aware of, a lot of challenges that, HBCU students and faculty face. Like not all of them have an office of sponsored projects. Not all of them have an innovation office. So, a North Carolina A&T State University and a Howard University is very different from a Philander Smith, a small rural HBCU. So we're helping, along with our partnership with Lakeisha to develop that innovation capacity. There are infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. So from our standpoint, we're really helping these students and faculty connect with those in this community of practice or ecosystem to identify with the funding sources available. So just from an awareness standpoint, that's a huge improvement on advancing capacity, specifically working with HBCUs and other minority serving institutions that are already starting behind. That already get, a minuscule amount of federal funding compared to predominantly white institutions. So just really connecting them with those funding sources and making them aware is what we're focused on in this ecosystem.
Yeah, I would go back to, SBIR funding and highlighting that it is non-dilutive, and that means there's no impact on your stocks or your shares. It's not a loan. So that's really great. And, underrepresented founders face very different experiences when trying to break into entrepreneurship. Very unique barriers. And we were just talking the other day amongst the Startup Challenge cohort about the topic of biases in venture capital. And the challenge getting those, that early funding. You have to work harder, you have to be smarter, you have to, just go the extra mile even to prove your value, even though you have that value. And so SBIR funding as a non-dilutive source is a wonderful opportunity. Our, phase 1 early grants for very early stage companies that don't have a product yet, they're trying to develop a prototype and conduct some proof of concept studies. That's $300,000 to $500,000 over 1 year. And our phase 2 grants are $2 million and $2.5 million, over 2 years. So that's a really great opportunity to take your idea and turn it into something else. And, and to go even earlier than that for folks that aren't quite ready, that's why we developed the Startup Challenge and identified those sort of missing resources that folks have a hard time accessing, like mentorship, like access to networks, to the table, to rooms that you don't normally have access to. So all of those things we really thought very hard about and identified as areas of need. And so grateful for Wearable Tech Ventures and Lakeisha mentoring several of our finalists in the challenge to really help them to, break into those rooms to understand how do I navigate this as an underrepresented founder. Yeah.
Taken as an aggregate, companies founded, and this is sort of normalizing for all other differences, companies founded by non-traditional founders are valued significantly lower than those valued by those created by traditional founders. And so coming from that standpoint, a non-dilutive funding is incredibly pivotal and important and enticing to enable the development and the growth of these companies. And we heard from two people at governmental agencies, but coming from someone in the startup field, just as a whole, non-dilutive funding is incredibly powerful to allow for the development, right? For dilutive funding, you sell a portion of your company to someone else for funding to allow you to do the research before you can get sales. And in a medical device company where we cannot sell product until we get FDA approval. We legally can't, and we morally and ethically should not. It's maybe a 5, 10, 20-year timeline before we get our first sale, which means our valuation is going to be pretty low, and to enable that incredibly large or capital-intensive development, you'd need to give away the majority of your company to a VC firm, which, that is sort of the way of things, and it's a necessary component of doing business. But that $300,000, $500,000 for phase 1, that $2.5 million for phase 2 can allow you to develop the IP, the capital, the knowledge, the personnel, to gain that valuation to allow for a much more favorable, whether it's angel round or Series A or Series B or whatever. The non-dilutive funding is, I would say, pivotal to enabling that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I love is that we were able to come to the table and help with the establishment of Upsurge. And with Equitech Baltimore, we were at the table as a mentor at Techstars, and we'll continue within that particular program. And we have success stories at Wearable Tech Ventures. I'm so excited. One of our startups from Brazil will be moving to Baltimore next year. They're fully funded, and they'll have the opportunity to focus on additional research and branching out their business, in the U.S. From the youth pipeline, we have a youth ambassador. He actually learned how to do some fundraising, and so he's working on his first prototype. And we have a number of other founders that have been winning pitch competitions left and right. I've been on the road. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I've been on the road quite a bit, and I'm just really excited about our founders that have been raking in the cash because they're really providing solutions to everyday problems that we need, right? So I want to get into who should be involved and what should that timeline be. We already discussed that we have a pipeline for youth, and some of you might be saying, hey, I've already graduated. Can I be a part of your ecosystem? And you can. We get inquiries all around the world. We have founders that just have ideas, folks that have never been affiliated with tech to folks that have been working with Apple. There's some amazing things that are in our pipeline, and of course you could go to, if you look at the QR code, listen to our podcast, Wearable Takeover, as well as sign up to be in our ecosystem. You'll learn more about that. But for the folks here, what are your recommendations for folks that may want to get involved, or have you had an experience with folks that may not have been in that K through 12 that wanted to get involved? And before they answer that, I'll just share, we actually had someone that was a grandfather that had an idea that he wanted to bring to market. And so we've been working with him over the past year in Atlanta to help bring that to fruition. So it's never too late, as long as you're coachable, as long as you are willing to collaborate and work with others and to be in an environment such as our hackathon, to meet people. It's never too late.
Yeah, so I would say the earlier the better, the sooner the better. So I didn't mention that our HBCU Innovation Grant, this current grant at AAAS that's funded by the National Science Foundation, actually started with the White House Maker Faire. I worked with their team in 2014, so we actually transitioned that work, and that was definitely my role in that work was organizing like a multi-generational approach, so reaching out to senior citizens, senior centers, as well as, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girls Clubs. So it's definitely multi-generational and just really expanding the idea of making. Like making goes back hundreds of years. Like it's a new term. Making and innovation is a new, the hot term now, but it goes back hundreds of years and, goes well into the future. So I would say the younger the better, and it's definitely, multi-generational.
Yeah, the younger the better, and also it's never too late, right? I think one of the sort of myths or things that stop people from coming to, say, NIH, for example, is I'm not an academic, I don't have a PhD, I'm not a scientist. That doesn't matter for SBIR. The awards are given to small businesses. If you have a small business and an innovative idea that meets a significant need, and you want to put science behind it, maybe you're not a scientist, but you want to put science behind it to put forth an evidence-based solution, you can apply for SBIR. You can partner with a research institution. You can, expand your team or hire consultants with the funding. So I would point that out first, because a lot of folks kind of, count themselves out for NIH funding if you're not a scientist. One of the things for the challenge that was really important to us was to open it up to the public and not specify you have to have a degree or you have to have a certain background. And you'll be amazed at the diversity of the group that we have. Diversity as in age, as in gender, as in racial ethnic background, technology type. It's really, really amazing. So, the earlier the better, but it's never too late. And I would say put yourself out there and take the first step. Just take the first step and take another one and another one and another one. And keep going. There are resources out there, so the more you take those steps and put yourself in rooms, you connect with people, you talk to people, you'll find out about where the resources are to help you.
There's a belief in Silicon Valley that you really have to be in your early 20s to start a profitable company, and that's just frankly not true. I think you start your first company fails maybe when you're 20, but you only really are able to succeed after you've failed 3 or 4 or 5 times. But it's been highlighted. We've highlighted, Joy and Iris have highlighted this, but early education is important. That's I think one of the strong points of Wearable Tech Ventures is the K through 12 educational component, getting kids interested in science, STEM, in entrepreneurship as early as possible, training the next generation of founders. And we're going to, they're going to start the next companies, and that's important. And whether it's when they're 20 or whether it's when they're 50, the next generation has to come along eventually. And the educational arm of Wearable Tech Ventures is, I think, a really strong component of that in Baltimore and around the world now.
Absolutely. And then we also have education for adults. So we have wearable workshops, and those have been recorded. They're available when you sign up for our ecosystem. You'll gain access to those links. And those were led by our partners at Qualcomm, at Under Armour, at Boeing. So these folks are really invested in that particular educational piece. One other thing I'd like to mention is that from the ecosystem perspective, I know we've kind of focused a lot on the youth and with the collegiate standpoint and with early startup, but one of the beautiful things about Wearable Tech Ventures is that we connect. We connect folks. So you have that educational piece, but then we're also able to connect to these government agencies, to additional fundings that's there, as well as to corporations. So if a founder wants to take a different route and maybe license or do something a little bit earlier, we can help with that. We were successfully able to connect a founder with Disney early on to make some business deals happen there. So we're really excited about things that are, happening, things that are moving forward. And the other thing is that industry, folks do not have to be in the tech industry to be impacted by wearable technology. We were able to provide a success story this past summer with one of our co-sponsors, the Baltimore Times. And so the Baltimore Times, for those of you, for those of you that don't know, it's America's oldest Black-owned family newspaper. And so we were able to challenge them to find a way to incorporate wearable technology during our hackathon. And as a result, they impacted the Black Association of Newspapers, and they're incorporating virtual reality into the reporting. So that's important from a sustainability standpoint. When you think about family businesses that may be diminishing, here we have a success story that says this is outside of the traditional tech industry, and we're helping them to leverage and connect with their audience in a new way. So there's so many other success stories. I know the other day I was here and I heard the travel industry. There were a couple folks here. We have a founder, Kai XR. She's been making waves in the news, even on the Steve Harvey Show back in the day, and doing some other things, but where she provides virtual tours for students so that they can get outside of the classroom and do some things with that. So we have founders within our ecosystem that even outside of VR that work on haptics. So if you're visually impaired, or hearing impaired, we have founders that have made waves with technologies that have been useful for folks to be successful and live everyday lives and run marathons. We have founders that actually supply some of the parts that can be used in wearable technology. We have founders that have developed jewelry and things that can unlock your doors. So all of these success stories you can hear about, and there's even some really cool ones that are coming in the form of an app where you can engage in wearable technology in a new way. And I forgot to mention the other cool thing that happened this year. We're officially a preferred provider with Roblox. So all the youth that are working with us, especially going into 2023, Wearable Tech Ventures is a preferred provider. So there's so many avenues, and it's really interesting. That's what I love about this. Really cool, right? That there's so many avenues and so many things that you can partake in. So before we close, I want to ask our panel here today. I mean, we've got a lot to share. I could go for hours on this, right? But what are you excited about with wearable technology, or is there a product that you're looking to get that you've been looking at, or something that you would hope that can be developed? And anybody can go first, because I know that was a loaded question. I put them on the spot here. I'm so excited. Like I could have a closet full of stuff, but okay, Nick, you go. That's a
Wildly broad question, but my PhD research focused on electronic tattoos, which one of the products or one of the papers that I published was one of the first direct printed electronic tattoos. So you can print it directly onto skin. It's fully integrated, and our current wearable technology is good for what it does, but there are some significant limitations, right? My Apple Watch cannot measure any real biometric signals. It can measure possibly my temperature, it can measure my heart rate, but it can't tell me, what my cortisol levels are, or how much I'm sweating, or do I need to drink? Do I need to eat electrolytes? There's so much information that can be gathered transdermally or through the skin, and in the next 5, 10, maybe 15 years, I expect that we're going to see a revolution in this wearable medicine-based wearable biosensors. We'll be able to monitor disease tracking. I think recently there was a wearable device that you can put right here. It measures breathing, and it measures coughing, and it measures sort of the improvement from someone that had COVID. And it really assists with the knowledge generation, but also medical treatments on this. So I think that in the next decade, maybe 2 decades, we will see, and I really hope to see, a pretty significant improvement in our ability to measure biometric signals with wearable technology.
Yeah, that was a loaded one. I have so many. I would say, what am I excited about? So I talked about the example from the Baltimore-based company developing that technology, but so my background is in geriatric care management, and that's kind of how I ended up at the NIA. And so my other passion is really around care coordination for patients that have Alzheimer's and dementia. And not only care coordination with their providers, but also with their loved ones, their family caregivers. And going back to health disparities, older adults more so those that are racial ethnic minorities aging in place at home, their caregivers are really burdened down trying to take care of their loved ones, trying to work, take care of their family and all the responsibilities that they have. And I really am excited to see what wearable technology can do to really help those family caregivers and providers and those patients with Alzheimer's in terms of their care coordination, in terms of remote patient monitoring, and also in maybe even predicting, cognitive decline, wandering, all the various challenges that are faced by this population. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. We're starting to see grant applications come in that are addressing these areas. It's certainly of high interest to us. So I'm really excited about that.
That's hard to follow. So I can't think of a specific product, but I think I can think of 2 or 3 areas that I'm excited to see something come out of. And one is the social justice. So I talked about just addressing equity issues, and this company was started from a social justice issue. A friend of mine started, I'm a chemist, a research chemist, and also a STEM education researcher by training. She founded a chemical apparel line, but she uses the proceeds to actually address social justice issues in the community. Another friend founded the Brown Toy Box. Her dolls are, in Target right now. Another area is accessibility, so accessible design. Just at AAAS, we're very focused on supporting scientists and engineers and innovators who have disabilities, or reframing that discussion as differently abled. And the third area is as a former fellow of the Department of Justice and just working on their technology issues is the justice system. We're well aware of the biased based errors with facial recognition technology. So just that whole, that justice area. So those are the 3 areas that I'm excited about wearable technologies possibly being applied to and having a huge impact.
I love it. So we're about to close out, but I do want to mention that we have taken a stance. We've been on the Hill. So we've been working with Congress and also with some corporate partners to address ethics and some of the biases, especially related to AI. So that's out there. But for those of you that are here, I'm excited about in the future, your phones will be obsolete. It will be replaced by wearable technology. It's sooner than you think. It's not 10 years off. It's less maybe than even 5 years off. And then even the way that we engage with one another at conferences and things like this, wearable technology from the development of hardware as well as the software is going to be the thing that's going to drive our engagement. So work with us to develop the future. And I guess we'll take some, before I go, I do have to shout out our partner in the back, Lottie from University of Maryland Dingman Center. We've been working with the Dingman Center for a very long time with coaching students and founders in that ecosystem. So thanks for being here. But with that, make sure you connect with us. Make sure you listen to our podcast. We got new episodes from season 1, part 2 that's loading. And we'll take some Q&A. Or if you just want to come up and rush and take pictures with us, we could do that too. As I think we're at our time. Thank you so much for the opportunity, ETC. Thank you for being a valuable partner. And again, congrats, Technically Media, on 10 years.